Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
Welcome to this week's episode of the SoundMoney Sound Principles Podcast. My name is Josh Anderson here with Zach Davis. How are you today, Zach?
I'm good, Josh. How are you guys?
And I am awesome. And we are super lucky today to be able to have one of our mentors and business partners with us again. The fans have been asking to hear from him again. And so we're super excited to have Mr. Roger Ball with us today. Roger, how are you?
I'm really good. Sun shining, spring's coming, daylight savings. It's great.
Life is on the up and up. If you're an Idaho boy or a Montana or Wyoming boy, you understand that when spring comes, you get excited. And it's spring here.
You know, 2 weeks ago, if you went out on the ranch, I say it's the ugliest it can be. And in 3 weeks, the grass starts coming up and all that stuff, and you see all these brand new calves. And then I say, hey, she just put on her going to meeting clothes. You know?
It's all changing. It's a good time to be alive, and it's a great time to be an entrepreneur with all of the new exciting things going on in the world. There's lots of rays of sunshine and blue sky for people. And so today I'm really excited because I've taken sometimes for granted how amazing it is to have someone like Roger in our business lives, where he has countlessly shared with us his experiences of the past, and we're able to learn from them. We've talked a lot, Zach, in the past about how important it is to have, you can learn a few different ways in this world. You can learn through personal experience and personal knowledge, but you can also learn through other people. And I'd say that we've learned a great deal from him through his experiences, and they become ours, right? Because we've learned so much from him.
Yeah, it's an important part of being an entrepreneur and running a business is you got to find like-minded people and people that have had those experiences. So it's been a really good run.
Well, today,
I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate that.
For most folks, today's going to be a little different. We've learned a lot, Roger, through your experiences in aviation. Like, you've spent a lot of your life sharing with us experiences that you've learned in aviation that then transition to ways that you've approached business. And I think it'd be really fun for the listeners just to hear a little bit about what it is you love about aviation, and maybe some experiences that you've had in aviation that helped you in business, or that people who aren't in aviation and have no desire to ever go fly an airplane, but they can learn from these experiences and they can find valuable knowledge in making daily decisions. So where did you get your start in aviation, and what made it so you were drawn to it?
You know, and I just, I'm talking about a real young boy, 5, 6, 7. My dad had a ranch down on what we call the deer parks on the Snake River. It's between Manan and Roberts. And I remember we used to go down there. On one side is the farm ground, more or less, and the other side is the desert out there, you know, like it's around the Manan Buttes and in that area. And, you know, I used to notice that there's a lot of eagles that lived along the river there, both golden and bald eagles. But what I was impressed with, especially in the late spring when the young eagles, I guess, got out of the nest, the mom and dad would be up there, and there'd be 1 or 2 little ones, and they'd be flying. And I think that they were teaching them how to fly, basically. Great thermals there. And I would see them eagles flying up there, and I'd look at it, and I, for some reason, knew that they were free. I mean, they were flying free. And I was just so impressed with that. And I said, one day I'm going to fly like an eagle. If there's any way possible, I'm going to fly like an eagle. And I think those were the first times that I actually, you know, the aviation, the flying, getting in the sky, impressed my soul, or me as an individual watching those eagles. And as I've gone through my life, I've, acquired some of those abilities, some of those wonderful feelings, and it's been through aviation. So that's kind of where I got started, Josh, I think.
You know, I recently listened to the biography of Orville Wright, and it was really awesome, right? If anybody gets a chance, right? Roger, his experience was as much like yours. He was watching seagulls along the ocean, and he watched them catch the wind and fly, right? And he couldn't get out of his head. He couldn't get it out of his head, and it took 27 years for them to develop their flying machine to a point that it could really fly. And I think in all people, in all entrepreneurs especially, there's this desire to have these big picture visions, these ideas that are so grand and so big that, and no offense, you're a little older.
Yeah.
When you watch those eagles fly, it was not very normal yet for man to really be flying.
No, you'd very seldom see any kind of, especially a private airplane. You know, it was, if you did, it was a very rare occasion. In fact, I don't remember anybody flying, you know, in my early life. I remember the first flight I ever had was with my dad in an airplane, and I was very impressed with that. And I was probably 10, 12 years old at that time. So, you know, it was a little later on in life. But, you know, when I relate flying to, you know, what we talk about here a lot about entrepreneurship. Like I've told you before, maybe not in this venue, but I served on a committee with the governor of the state of Idaho, Kempthorne. He got about 20 people in the state of Idaho, and he got us together, and he said, I want to learn something because Idaho needs entrepreneurs. He said, I want to find out where entrepreneurs come from. And are they born? Are they made? And I spent a year meeting with these 20 people 4 or 5 times when we were trying to come to that conclusion. And I came to the conclusion that entrepreneurs are born and they're also made by example. And that's my belief, that where an entrepreneur comes from. And they're what I call a true entrepreneur. Somebody who has an idea, who believes in it, and will give everything for it. To me, that's an entrepreneur. How does that relate to flying? You know, when you're at 12,000 feet in the air in a single engine airplane at night, and you can hardly see anywhere, you're a little vulnerable. You know, and when you get to know an airplane really well, one of the saddest days of my life is when my kids sold 8 X-ray. This is an airplane that I spent years flying, and I flew it, and you know what, in the backcountry. You know where I flew it at.
And we understand. And so people that don't understand aviation, 88 X-ray is the tail number for your favorite airplane, which was a 1980?
1981 Cessna 206 turbocharged. Yeah.
6588 X-ray.
6588 X-ray.
You both have had experience in that airplane.
We've had great.
You can tell some of the experiences that you've had in an airplane, and you spent a few hours flying it around the country. You know.
Yeah.
Beautiful little plane. I loved that plane. I trusted that plane. We were the best of friends. Yeah, that's how I would describe it.
Well, you know, old 88 X-ray is a beautiful, beautiful girl. Why don't you tell us, right? Like, so how old were you when you decided you were going to get your pilot's license, and where were you at in your business life at that time?
I was about a little over 30 years old. I was extremely busy. Was tending a number of businesses. But, you know, I looked at it and I said, either I'm going to learn how to fly or I'm not. And I've either got to spend the time to do it. So I actually spent the time, and it took a few hours to go, you know, every Tuesday morning or whenever you learned. But that was about the age at which I learned how to fly and got a pilot's license and bought an airplane. I flew for a little while renting airplanes, you know, until I bought 88 X-ray. But that was about the time in my life when aviation became real. Yeah.
So in that, I'm curious, why? I would imagine it started out as a way that, hey, I need to get more time. I need to get from Idaho Falls to salmon quicker to probably a jerky plant. I need to get to these other places in California. But But it took on more than that. It became for you more. I've been with you enough to know it became more than just a means of travel and saving time. It became something that you identified yourself as a pilot. What caused that?
Let me start with to answer that question, Josh. And I'm going to relate back. Are entrepreneurs made or are they born? It doesn't matter. If you are truly an entrepreneur, you will be an entrepreneur at all costs, literally, almost at all costs. Flying is the same way as a pilot. You're either a pilot or you're not. In my experience in life, you are either a pilot or you are not. I can't imagine, well, I could give the names of the people who got their, pilot training in 8 X-ray, got their license, and then it went away. They didn't keep up with it. They were not pilots. Some simple little experience would discourage them, scare them, and they'd quit. And I could go down the list. So in my opinion, you're either a pilot or you're not. You're either an entrepreneur or you're not. I think you can't change that. I think it's in you. And you will do almost anything to accomplish those things and have those experiences. I can tell you experiences in 8 X-ray that, most of the people that actually flew with me quit flying with me. Seriously. And the reason why is because I would scare them. I loved to be a bird in an airplane. Fly like a bird. Once you get 1,000 hours in an airplane and it's the same airplane, every little movement that airplane makes, you feel. When you land, you don't land an airplane. You land like a bird. It feels. You don't have to. It's like when you drive. When you learn to be a driver, when you go around the corner, you don't have to think about going around the corner. You just go around the corner. When you need to apply the brakes, you just apply brakes, and that's the way it is with me and flying. I got to where I knew when I seen what I could do because I knew what that bird could do. And myself and 8 X-ray got to be extremely good friends. We had a lot of life, having problems that could have taken lives, okay? And we always survived. And I think, well, anyway, not entrepreneurs and pilots are a lot the same way in that. Let me tell you a story. I spent a number of years in Russia, and my area was in the town of Omsk, which was a military town, and it was really tough going there because our religion was being persecuted and a lot of things. Well, we had a meeting one day with our leader, John Galbraith. We had 8 or 10 people in that meeting. And he was asking the people there how they're doing. A couple of them had lost their jobs and most all of them didn't have jobs. One thing to have a job and get paid, nobody was really getting paid or all those issues. Well, there was a young man there that was about 25 years old. When I got to Russia, I recognized him, and he's carrying a lunch bucket around. And on that lunch bucket were just all kinds of pictures of airplanes. And I went to church with him, and after church, he was making all these paper airplanes for all these kids. And they were flying these paper airplanes. And that's my first experience with Victor, okay? But we were having a meeting, as you are well aware, that Russia went south. The military went south. I mean, there was really no military then as such. Well, Victor had been trying to be and was in the Air Force. And he had started to fly jets and had, I think, 26 hours of actual jet flying time. Just a very young, student in that area. Well, John Galbraith was going around talking to all the brethren that was there, the men. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And they got to Victor, and Victor says, "Oh, Brother Galbraith, I've been every day at the airport. I've been working so hard to find a job there. I want to be in aviation, and I just try and I try." And John looked at Victor and he said, "Victor, maybe the Lord doesn't want you to be a pilot." And Russians don't cry. Have you ever seen a Russian man cry? They don't cry. They don't cry. Okay?
They're pretty stoic.
They are pretty stoic. Well, and just almost immediately, Victor's head dropped and these great big tears started dropping off his chin. No emotion, just running with tears, okay? Well, after the meeting, John said, "Roger, what was the matter with Victor?" And I said, I get emotional here. I said, "John, you broke his heart." And John says, "I did what?" He says, "John, you broke Victor's heart." He says, "How did I do that?" He says, "You told him that God didn't want him to be a pilot. You broke his heart. That's why he was crying." And we had a conversation. I said, "John, I can make Victor a pilot. I can take him back to America. And, I'm involved in aviation. I had to run the FBO out here at Idaho Falls in Western Aviation. Companies have been in aviation. I can make Victor a pilot." Well, we didn't take young people from Russia and bring them to America because we needed them in Russia. Okay. And Victor said, and John Garber says, "Roger, you forget that." Okay. No way. Okay. Well, John came back. He came around about every six weeks. Said, "I think I've changed my mind. If you can get Victor to the United States and have his dreams come true of being a pilot, go ahead and do it." Well, I went to Victor and I said, "Victor, let's give a whirl." We got on the computer and went through the computer and found Utah State had a flight school there and some stuff. And so I started to try to get Victor here. Okay. Well, it took about a year and a half, and I finally got him here. He now flies for United all over the world. He's a pilot. I'll never forget when we brought him back here, right out of Russia, and he knew that I had an airplane. I told him that. We went out to the airport out here, and it was just getting dark, and you punch the number in to get the gate to open, and we got in the airplane when we went for a ride, and when we come back, it was dark. You can't imagine how he enjoyed that. I mean, I could look on his face and see the absolute pleasure just in being able to fly. That's probably the first time he'd actually got in an airplane, really in an airplane since the military went south in Russia. I remember we got to the gate and I punched the button, the gate didn't open. Boy, I could see the color going out of his face. He says, "Roger, they're going to catch us." And I says, "What are you talking about, Victor?" "They're going to catch us and throw us in jail." See, he thought because the gate was locked, we were doing something wrong. And I said, "Victor, they're not going to catch us. They're not going to throw us in jail. There's something the matter with that gate. We hit the next gate, punch the button, the gate opened, okay? Well, are you a pilot?" I can go through, I don't know how many times, people in town that a lot of these people know here. You're either a pilot or you're not. And your experiences will decide that for you.
Zach,
You're either an entrepreneur or you're not.
yeah, that's true. Zach, when Roger's sharing that story, I think there's some real value in, we all have things we're passionate about. We all have things that identify us, right? That are our identity. And how much obligation do we have when we find the next generation of people that have our same goals and dreams? What is our obligation to help them? Like, that's what I'm wondering after Roger's story.
Well, I think about the story that Roger tells, and you think about history, and it's all stories, and we pass down what we learn in stories, right? And every single entrepreneur that's an entrepreneur today, in my opinion, is that because somebody has shared a story previously that they've heard that sparks something inside of them that's like, hey, I got to go do this thing, right? Or I gotta go try this. And I think it's critical and it's crucial, because that's what breeds that entrepreneurial spirit, is to see other people doing it and to see, other people have courage. And because Roger talks about fear a lot. And that's one of the biggest things that stops people from going after what they really want, is either they don't have the problem solving skills, or they just are shrouded with fear. So it blocks all the creativity in their mind and they can't go accomplish the thing. And, when you surround yourself with people that are doing it, or you hear the stories of people that are doing it, it can help pull some of that fear away, where you go, well, somebody else has done it, right? And I can go do it too. And it just breathes this fire. And that's, American innovation, that's where it came from, is just generations of generations of generations of people saying the status quo is not good enough, right? There's some problem that needs to be solved, and I'm going to be tenacious enough about solving it. Even in your story, Roger, I think about, there's a lot of men who would have looked at Victor and went, well, he's not going to be a pilot, right? He lives in Russia. His circumstances are such that it's not in the cards for him. Even John Galbraith's like, it's not, it must not be in the cards for you. But that entrepreneurial spirit that you carry was like, we have a problem here, and we're going to chew at this thing until we get this problem solved and get him to be a pilot. That is that legacy that I think is passed down from entrepreneur to entrepreneur to entrepreneur through mentorship and association, is that tenacity to keep moving forward. It's incredible.
I've always thought of the word entrepreneur, sometimes a simpler term for that is a dreamer or a dream builder. And I love this story, this example of, Roger's constantly being a dream builder, sometimes of his own dream, right? His own vision, but oftentimes recognizing somebody else has a dream and saying, I can play a role in helping them accomplish it. And I think we all, as entrepreneurs, we have a duty when we see someone who has a dream that we can do anything to facilitate, whether it has any financial remuneration or not, doesn't matter. We owe it to the next generation of entrepreneurs to give all we can to build their dream. And I've been forever grateful for Roger and for other people like him in my life that have been my dream builders, that are encouraging of the dream. And so thanks for sharing that story. I've heard that story, but not in that detail, with all the detail before. So I appreciate that.
Well, the old pilots, that's all they do is tell stories. Old men, that's all they do is tell stories.
Well,
But you relate this to aviation per se. I remember when I was learning how to fly, I would go over and sit in the pilot's room. And these old pilots would be in there, like Bart Hendricks or somebody else. One day I was in and I heard them talk about landing at Soldier's Bar. And they describe it, How many of you guys, well, 2 or 3 of those guys had landed at Soldier's Bar. And he's describing it, 4,300 feet up the creek, and here's the big rock. You grab a hard left. You got to hit the numbers because the runway is short and it runs into the mountain and all these things, and I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, I wonder if I'll ever land on Soldier's Bar, get good enough I could do that. And I flew over Soldier's Bar, I don't know how many times between there and been a member of the Flying Resort Ranches around the Middle Fork and spent a lot of time in there.
So people understand, we're talking a grass runway surrounded by 10,000 foot peaks and a river in the bottom. That's what Soldier's Bar is.
Yeah, and at the end of the runway, it just drops off right, a cliff. And it goes, if you read about it in flight books that you get, it'll say only for experienced pilots, danger. It was not, but I would fly over it many times there early on, and I'd look down and I'd say, dang, I got to get enough guts to land there, And I can still hear Bart Hendricks talking, this old pilot. And I remember we went into the Flying Bee one day, and there was myself, Marcia, Doug Green, and Gary Peterson, who is here now and is retired from United Flying. Okay, Doug Green flew for Huntsman, flew the Prophet and all the Apostles all over the world. He was their pilot. Okay, these were kids when I started. They're all younger than I am. I hired them. I watched them grow. Well, we went into Flying B one morning. We were going to go in and practice landing on some of these little short runways. Got down there. Oh, it's a beautiful morning. The air was heavy with dew. The sun had just come up. A pilot will appreciate this. The air was heavy, beautiful, still. And I looked at Marcia and Doug and Gary and I said, Soldier's Bar. Gary Green bailed out, Marcia bailed out. I looked over at Doug and he says, Soldier's Bar. You're flying. So I got in the plane, I'm flying, I'm the pilot. Well, we were going into Soldier's Bar, and there's a mountain, I guess, radios where we get on a frequency where we tell everybody where we're at. We're flying in a primitive area. Well, they went down to the lodge and they're sitting here listening to the radios. Doug and I are going down the river, hard right up, hard right. You know, yeah, there's the big rock, you know, and we're talking about it, and get the big rock, 30 degrees of right, 30 degrees of flaps, hard right, land right on the edge of the runway because there's no runway to speak of. You go over 2 bumps, go up a steep hill on a curve, and you stop. When I stopped up there, the airplane started to go backwards. So I put the brake on the airplane, took my feet off the pedals, and they were just going like this. I mean, my adrenaline was right here, okay? I mean, I had made it, and all of a sudden on the radio, we hear everybody clapping, you know? Well, the Smarsh and these guys at the Flying B on the radio, because they'd been listening to us, you know? Well, after that, I flew over Soldier's Bar, and I looked down, and I said, you son of a gun, I own you. I own you. You're mine. Okay, and I landed there a number of times after that, you know. Well, in life, it's a lot like that. You know, we get involved in a business. It takes all our money. There's not one soul that believes that we can do it. We know we can do it. We have all these problems, you know. And the interesting thing is that all these people say you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. Okay, well, you know, Marcia and Gary got out of the plane. Can't land Soldier's Bar, right? As bad as they'd have wanted to. Well, the interesting thing is that all these people say this. I mean, and you start it. And it is a struggle. It is an adrenaline rush. Is it not an adrenaline rush? It is an adrenaline rush, okay, when you start a business. It costs everything. And but when you start to have success, what happens? Everybody starts clapping, don't they? You made it. Oh, you made it. You know, there are some rewards for that. And you know, you relate flying with what we do in entrepreneurship. They're almost exactly on the same plane. We do it for the same reason. We love it. It's extremely dangerous, and we would not give it up for anything.
It's maybe the greatest rush in the world is having an idea, having the whole world tell you it's impossible. You believe and know at your heart of hearts that the world needs a solution to the problem, but you believe you have it. Oftentimes, the solution that you think you have has 7 to 10 iterations before you actually solve it. And a lot of times the solution is really far away from what you started out as. But very few people, Roger, are willing to get in the airplane with you and do it and go through the process, because it is scary, and usually it means putting everything at risk. But there is no more exhilarating feeling than winning, than landing the plane and making the business a success. And unfortunately, Roger, and I'm gonna pick on Zach, I've watched you and both of you have this challenge where it never seems to end. Is there an end to this?
It's a disease.
Well, I'm 85, and it's driving me crazy. My wife is insisting that I quit. And I actually think I'm coming to the end, so I think maybe there is an end. But it won't come soon for you two. You got a long ways to go. So pull up your straps and do up your shoes, because you got a long ways to go yet. I'm 85 and still drives me crazy every morning. Zach and I were talking today about sleeping at night. Oh my gosh.
Can't do it.
You can't do it.
Can't sleep.
There's too much opportunity in the world. There's too much opportunity, and there's too much brain discussion in your brain about solutions to
Absolutely,
problems.
you don't sleep.
Well, and what's so exhilarating about it sometimes is, like you said, I mean, it really is like, I mean, entrepreneurship really is like flying, but with no wings. Like you take off and somehow you levitate, but you have to build the thing as you go, right? Because nobody has paved the path. Like there is no blueprint or there is no book to follow. You know, I think part of it when you do it, if you do anything very big that's meaningful, you do put it all on the line. And then there's periods where you go out and you hire the smartest people that you know to help you do these things.
Yes.
And then the problems that they can't solve, they bring to you. And so you have all your risk sitting there of what you've put up to do it. And you've hired the smartest people, but still at the end of the day, if they would have solved the problems, right? And the business would already be created. So you have to navigate through, okay, the smartest people I know that I've hired can't solve this problem. So if I can't solve this problem, then we're out of business, right? The plane's coming down, and
You're gonna wreck.
yeah.
You're
And when you
all the way
get
down.
yeah, and when you get in that position, like the incentive is for most people, they're like, well, can't really solve the problem. We're going to back out. Hey, when you're building with the wings on and you've put everything up and it's just a crash landing, you have to just sit and chew on that problem until you figure it out. And I mean, Marsh has been trying to get you to quit for 20 years.
I've quit
You're
7
tired.
times. I've quit 7 times.
and it doesn't stick, does it?
Doesn't work.
I mean,
No, doesn't work.
it's a
You know,
disease.
I'll never forget, there was a day, Roger, that it's been now probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. This is a while ago. I showed up at your door, Zach and I, one day, and your wife answered the door. And we hadn't seen each other, your wife and I, for maybe a year or two. And she opened the door and she shut the door and said, whatever you're about to tell my husband.
Whatever you're
Tired.
peddling, we don't want.
And well, we're sitting here. We have lots of business ventures together. So she didn't mean it. She didn't mean it.
She knew it was bad news if we showed up.
This very day, the day that we're talking right now, we sat at this very table. Okay. And what did we do?
We saw another amazing opportunity in the world.
Yeah.
We seen, we're going to disrupt this. We're going to tear this thing apart and teach it how to do it. Did I get excited?
Yeah.
I got excited. I was headed for Soldier's Bar, man.
You know, it's amazing in the world we live in today. To me, it's not a lack of opportunity. It's a lack of time, right? We have to say, I can be involved in 5 to 7 things at a time. This is my number. I can usually be my mental capacity. I'm pretty good at being involved in 5 to 7 things at a time. And, like real things. I mean, real big challenges. And it's just a matter of allocating what 5 to 7 big challenges in the world we're trying to tackle. And we saw one today. It's crazy. We saw one today at this table that the whole world's going to know about in a few years. And it's a big challenge that is going to get solved right here at these tables with us. And it's kind of fun. It's what gets us excited.
It's going to solve, if our business plan is right, and if we think right, it's going to solve issues for thousands of small businesses in the world, in the United States, that we need individually, in our businesses. And I don't know, I hope I live long enough to see that. But
You will.
I hope I do, because, and I see the excitement. I see the work that's already gone into this, with Anthony, and I just sat there and said, what a wonderful opportunity it is for me just to be able to sit at this table and associate with people who are true entrepreneurs. What a blessing. That's what my daughter said. She was sitting with us. What'd she say?
She said it's a blessing to be at this table today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's awesome about life. And you can tell in us, right, that's what gets us excited in the world. And we realize there's thousands of you listening who you're taking your first steps into the space. You're trying your first home-based business. You're trying your first foray into business. You're attempting it. And you come here every week just to get encouragement. And we're here to tell you that you can do it. you can make it. You might not have the right people around you who can buoy you up every day, but there's somebody who can. And man, you're gonna win. You're gonna win in the world. Zach,
and it's like you're gonna pay the price. Like there are going to be. I mean, you didn't go land on Soldier's Bar on day one, Roger. Right? You had to get to know that airplane, and you had to get to know wind and turbulences and cloud formations and weather patterns and and so a lot of you who are just trying to get this started, you run into these little bumps and it's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'm not supposed to. And there's this like weird concept that I need to go to school and get my MBA because they'll teach me how to do it. And there's this book that no, you just got to keep working on the problem, right? And you got to keep learning and keep getting more and more information and you got to do the daily grind. But man, when you get it worked out, it is incredible. It is incredible.
You know how I relate that to, this may be kind of crazy, but when I've had ideas that have become billion-dollar companies, literally, right here in Idaho Falls, billion-dollar companies that nobody had ever heard about, ever, really. What do you do first? You look at it and you like it. It goes through here, and you say, oh, I like that. It feels good, right? It's like when you seen your wife the first time. You looked at her and you said, my gosh, look at that girl. I want to go over there and I want to get my arms around her. I want to dance with her. I want to have, what do you do? So after you get this idea and you see it, then what do? First you flirt with it. Then you snuggle up to it and you feel it. And you work at it, and then you become engaged with this idea. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I need to marry this girl. I need to marry this idea. Oh, what does that mean? Oh, that means I'm going to have to provide a living for her. That means I'm going to have kids. How many 29, 30-year-old young men out here in this world today that look at that and it scares them so bad they can't get married? All right, well, here's this idea, and you realize you're going to marry that. You're going to marry that, and then what you got to do with it? You got to take care of it. Then the work really starts. So that's an idea. That's what an entrepreneur does time after time after time after time. Like, flirt, squeeze, marry. Once you marry it, man,
you're committed.
You are committed. There's no way out. There's, it's time to perform, and it's scary. I know when I got married, I was a little scared, Well, I've had a lot of ideas,
It's funny you say that. I spent last evening with a gentleman, and I've heard you share that before, and he was pitching me his business idea. And his business idea was great for him. It's a lot of risk for a little bit of upside and a little bit of reward, but a lot of risk for the little reward. And I shared that with him, that if you're going to do this, you've got to the point now that you're pretty engaged. You put up your own money, but if you're going to marry it, you got to get serious, because there's no turning back. If you fail, you're going to lose your house and maybe some personal property and some things. So you're fully committed, and it doesn't seem like to me today that you're fully committed. So if you're going to take the next step in your business, you better get really fully committed. And I've been lucky enough. I got great business partners in most everything in the world, and man, I got committed ones. When we jump off that diving board, there's no going back to the top. We're going there. So. Zach, some last thoughts today, and then I'm going to turn to Roger and let him share some last thoughts today with the listeners.
Yeah, it's been fun to hear some of these stories again. We've heard this is what we've sort of the last 15, 20 years grown up on, right? Is hearing these stories and relating them to the entrepreneurial endeavors, and then you go home and you start thinking about these stories and like, oh, how does this relate to what I'm doing, or does that fit me or whatever? And so it's super fun to hear the stories again. I would just say for the the listeners that are thinking about things, I don't know of. I mean, Roger, you've lived a lot longer than I have, but I'm 44 years old, and I don't know if there's. I mean, I guess every period has their season, but holy cow, I don't know of a time where the opportunities are as big as they are right now and as vast. Like I mean, there's so many things right now in my head that I want to go build and do. I was just talking to Anthony yesterday, right, about some like I really need this for some customer service people, and this doesn't exist. But man, if we could build that software, that's a $100 million company in and of itself. We just need it for our people, But with the advent of AI and automation and all the technology, the speed of innovation, and I mean the businesses and jobs and companies coming back to America, the manufacturing that's going to be happening, whatnot. This is like, I don't think there's a better time than right now to go out and really do what you're trying to do. So I'm excited for anybody that's out there really, really fighting for it and trying to do it. Now is the time to go get it. So just keep pushing, keep going. There's lots of us in your corner that are cheering for you, just like we have lots of people in our corner cheering for us. And like Roger said, if you commit to it and you're married to it, you're going to get it figured out. And don't quit on yourself. I mean, the world needs what you're trying to figure out, and it will bless lots of people's lives. So just keep pushing, keep pushing.
This is why I relate this to, for example, for marriage. I've looked at my good wife and I've said, there's one word we do not use in this marriage, ever. You know what it is?
Divorce.
Talk with the D.
Yep.
Talk with the D. We do not talk about divorce. It is not part of our conversation. It's not part of our thought pattern. I don't care what comes. We do not consider or talk about divorce. Start a new company. Oh. You do not talk about quitting. It's not part of your vocabulary. You will live and die in that situation. Business is not that important, but if you don't have that in your heart and soul, you're not an entrepreneur, and I don't think you'll ever be successful. And every entrepreneur that hears me say that will resonate with that. They know that. They feel it. It's part of them. Just like being a pilot is part of you. That's my favorite hobby. I love dated X-ray. I call her a she was my little red and white mule, okay? If she even coughed different, I could tell. If she was not healthy when I got in her and took off, I would know. You know why? Because I did it so many times and I had heard her so many times, I knew how she felt. If we were in rough weather, I knew how she'd act. Because we've been there, we've done it, okay? And you guys, you flew an 8 X-ray. You were probably in rough enough weather, you're going,
Uh-huh.
and bad weather, shouldn't be flying. My young grandkids want to learn how to fly. And I say, that's fine. I'm not going to pay for it. I'm not going to encourage it. But if you're a pilot, then go learn to fly, because it very likely will kill you. Almost every friend that I have that flew where I flew, the way I flew, are dead. They're dead because they loved what they did and they gave their life for it, literally. Right? John Chaffin, Thor's Red. I mean, I can go down the list. They're dead. They didn't quit. Did they succeed? I don't know. All I know, they loved what they did, and that's what an entrepreneur does. That's the way it is. We won't change it. We can't shake it off. Sometimes it's an absolute bitch to carry on your back. I mean, it is. And then the elation, the pure elation of taking your feet off that pedal and feel your feet doing an absolute jig on those pedals. Adrenaline way up here. The elation of that, you'll die for that. You'll die for that. That's the way it is. That's life.
You know, and for me today, I was reminded that in business, we fight for our dreams. We make them a reality. We don't give up on them. And a lot of times, an entrepreneur or someone fighting for a business, economic conditions change, politicians change, whole industries come and go. But if a company is willing to be nimble, willing to adapt, willing to make changes, and not divorce it, they can see it through and turn it into something that is beautiful and miraculous and can bless tens of thousands, if not millions of people's lives around the world. And that's why we do what we do. And today, I think it's been a really special treat for the listeners to be able to hear a little bit from Roger about his passion for aviation and how it's guided and led him in business and some of those things. And for that, we're extremely grateful. And we're thankful to all the listeners today. And we can't wait to see you next time on the Sound Money, Sound Principles podcast. And from the bottom of our heart, thank you, Roger, for sharing your personal experiences today. Appreciate it.
Well, old men tell stories and they like to tell them, so I'm glad to be here.
Perfect. Well, we'll let all the listeners
Enjoy.
join. Thanks.
Roger. Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
See you guys.